There's a new me coming out, and I just have to live, and I wanna give. I'm completely positive. I think this time around I am gonna do it like you never knew it. Oh, I'll make it through. The time has come for me to break out of the shell. I have to shout that I am coming out. I'm coming out. I want the world to know.
Welcome to the show, Never Too Late Ever, where we focus on making the next chapter of your life the very best chapter. I am your host, Lorraine Hoving, and I am so glad you are joining us today. This day will change your life. Open your heart, open your ears, and listen, and you will find a gem, a treasure that you can apply to your life today. And today I am so excited to have a guest. Today I want to let you know too, I am hosting this from Hawaii. We are still in the midst of the crisis, and I am praying all of you health and that everybody is doing well out there. We will get through this crisis. But I want to introduce you to our guest today, and his name is Corey Poirier. Hi, Corey.
Hi, how's it going, Lorraine?
Going well. How's it going? Where are you located?
Well, where I'm at right now, because of course I can't travel, is in the east coast of Canada. So where I was born.
Okay.
Near Nova Scotia.
Where is it located?
Oh, near Nova Scotia.
Oh, near Nova Scotia. Okay. All right. Well, we've got a visual because we don't know all the towns over there, but we definitely have a visual where you're located. So let me tell you a little bit about Corey Poirier. He is a multiple-time TEDx, MoMondays and PMx speaker. He is also host of the top-rated Conversations with Passion radio show, founder of the speaking program BLU Talks, and he has been featured in multiple television specials. A columnist with Entrepreneur and Forbes magazine, he has been featured on CBS, CTV, NBC, and ABC. Wow, Corey. He is a Forbes Coach Council member, and he is one of the few leaders featured twice on the popular Entrepreneur on Fire show. He has also interviewed over 5,000 of the world's top leaders. One of the most recent talks took him to New York City, and I love this, where he had the extreme pleasure of speaking to at-risk youth at the Brooklyn Navy Yard Boys and Girls Club. And you know what? It takes someone with a heart to share with those kids, because don't you have compassion on the kids, the youth of today? And that's really neat. A father of his young son, Sebastian. How old is Sebastian, Corey?
He's working his way towards 3. He's very close to 3.
Oh, you know what? I love that age. I love that age where they have that little personality. Corey's also boyfriend to Shelley and a father to 3 fur babies. Corey is also a practicing yogi and a rock recording of the Year Nominee. Wow, Corey. So you know what? Everybody out there that follows this show knows I love fur babies. So first question, what are your fur babies? Are they dogs, cats, a mix, or rabbits, or what are they?
So a dog and 2 cats.
A dog and 2 cats. And do they all get along?
They do for the most part. The 2 cats kind of push the dog around. He's a smaller dog, so they push him around, but they all get along, I think, overall. That's the way I would say it.
Okay, well, welcome. So tell us a little bit about you, just a little bit to start with. I've, of course, read your introduction. And so where are you located, actually? Aren't you in Alberta normally?
So where I was born and where I'm based when I'm not traveling is a little place called Prince Edward Island.
Oh, okay. Wow.
So an island and, surrounded by water. And when I am traveling, I travel, of course, between the US and Canada regularly, and Alberta is where I do a lot of my talks. So I definitely have, I'll call it a close spot, a soft spot for Alberta. And so I do spend a lot of time there.
Okay. That's why I thought that you were from Alberta. So it must be because you do spend some time there.
Yeah, I did live there for the better part of almost 10 years. So it is kind of my second home.
Okay, great. Well, tell me a little bit about what wakes you up on fire in the morning, Corey. What is your passion? What wakes you up and you go, okay, I'm going to tackle this today. This is a great day.
For the most part, I mean, there's a couple things, but I think for me, the biggest one is creating another ripple for somebody. And so, a lot of times that can be helping people. We talked about, you mentioned the speaking side. So it can be helping people get on another stage or a bigger stage or get their message out in a bigger way. But at the end of the day, the underlying, I think, driver for me is knowing that I have the potential to create an invisible impact for people every single day. So that's kind of what drives me.
Yeah, that's neat. And I would say when I ask that question, I would say 100% of the time, actually, now that I think about it, what wakes us up in the morning is actually the passion or the mission to help somebody else. And I think that is so cool. It's not about gaining wealth in the world or anything. When I ask people, it's about helping someone else that gives us significance in our life. So that's great. So today you have entitled your show, Becoming a World-Class Speaker Today. And I want to ask you, first of all, how did you get into speaking, Corey?
Well, I'll tell you first and foremost that it certainly wasn't one of these things where I was this guy who, just naturally was meant to be on a stage, and I just walked up on my first stage or spoke in front of the first audience, and it was just as comfortable can be. It was kind of the exact opposite situation for me. So for me, I was that guy who, you hear about them, but the shaking legs, sweat coming down my forehead, changing shades of color. Unfortunately, every color except for the color I started with, all that kind of stuff. That was who I was when I started. And then what happened, it's a really weird way that I found my way into speaking, but essentially I got tricked into performing stand-up comedy one night. And, the first thing somebody might say is, how do you get tricked? But I'll explain that. I get tricked into performing stand-up comedy one night, and that resulted in me getting into a speaking career. I basically bombed on a stand-up comedy stage, bombed horribly, and went back week after week. But ultimately, I discovered this thing called professional speaking, where you could actually get paid to do what I was doing in the comedy clubs and actually have people cheering you rather than drunk and booing you. So that's kind of how I got in. I was tricked in by being first introduced to stand-up comedy.
Well, that's interesting because normally most people, if they bombed, wouldn't get back up again. Why did you get back up and try again? Did you suddenly have a little taste of it?
So the interesting part is I definitely, as I said, I definitely bombed. But one thing that did happen is I also survived. So it's one of those things where I realized that, wait a minute, I thought that the idea of being on a stage, I thought I would die if I was on a stage. And right. The fact that I didn't die was enough, I think, to make me want to go back the next week. And maybe there was a part of me that was craving the idea of getting the laugh that I didn't get that first night. Yeah. And I chased it. It was almost like a carrot. I chased that laugh for probably 2 years before I started getting belly laughs. Like it was a long haul of bombing night after night. But so what kept me going back, I think, was chasing the laugh. And then also realizing that even when you're bombing, you're helping people escape from their day. They were coming from a crappy day at the office. And even if you were bombing, they were still snickering that you were bombing. So you were still giving them an escape. And then the other side, people often ask me what made me get on the stage that first night. And I never used to have an answer for that because I don't know why I didn't. I'm usually pretty open, but I don't know why I didn't share this sort of story of this vision I had. But what happened was this is part of the story I tell when I talk about that night, but I went into the bathroom to try to find an exit window so I could sneak out of the comedy club and not perform because I didn't know we were going to be performing until 5 minutes to showtime. But what happened was while I was in that bathroom and coming out of the bathroom, I thought of, for whatever reason, I had this vision of me sitting at that bar, the same bar, and there's an old man, let's say, 90, sitting next to another old man, drinking and saying, you know, I could have done that one night. I was going to do that one night. That was going to be me. But me sitting there as the guy who never did it. And I just, for whatever reason, I said to myself, I don't want to be that guy. I would rather go up on that stage and pass out than be that guy that has that regret. So that's what got me up. And then also what kept me going back was, I guess, chasing that laugh that I didn't get for a long time.
Wow. That's a cool story. And it's got lots of little gems in there about not giving up, or even thinking about your worst case scenario and then backing it up from like going to the worst case. Well, I could die, but you didn't die. You actually survived, and then you dug in, and a lot of perseverance there. I love that story. So somebody out there, what are 2 to 3 secrets that you would want to tell speakers that they would need to know if there's people out there that would like to become a speaker, or even just share their story?
So there's actually lots of different, of course, I'm going to say a book full of secrets I would love to tell people if I had all day. So I'm going to pick a few of the things that I think would make the biggest impact for somebody who's just starting. And it's the stuff I wish I would have known early on. And so for the first one, I would say a lot of people don't realize the importance of the structure of your talk. And so I'm going to give people an easy way to structure a talk that, to me, would mirror a lot of world-class speakers. And so how I would suggest people structure a talk is the vision and visualize. Most people don't know the stand-up comedy world, so I'll say visualize if you go to a music show or a concert. And think about how the concert plays out in terms of the set list and how they have this stuff set up. It's not a coincidence. It's not an accident how they have it set up. So what I recommend is that people set up their talks and structure them just like you would see a music or a comedy show. And so what I mean by that is, if you think about how a show is, if you go to see the Rolling Stones, just to throw a band name out there, typically their strongest song isn't the one they play first. They usually open with a song you know, but not their strongest song. So like it could be Angie or Wild Horses, or one of their songs that's well known, but not their biggest hit. But then what they do is they wait till the encore to play their biggest hit. So let's say that was Satisfaction. In between there, what they'll do is they'll layer it with 3 or 4 hits, and then they'll play a brand new song. And everybody gets up during the new song, goes and buys French fries and goes to the bathroom. And then they make sure they have a hit right away again to pull you right back into the show. So what I'm saying is, if you think of that structure, think about how could you structure your talk like that. So what I recommend people do is start with the second strongest thing you're going to share, whether it's a story, an opening question, whatever that is. And then you want to break it up into 3 acts, just like you would a play or a movie or a concert. And so then what you're going to do is, within those 3 acts, just to explain that to people, typically what I like to do is I like to set up a situation. Like, for example, let's say my talk was on customer service. I might say, how many people agree that customer service stinks? I'm just throwing it out there that way. But how many people think it's worse than it's ever been? And a bunch of hands go up. And then I lay the groundwork for what customer services looked like the last little bit. And then my second act will be when I raise the problem with that. And then the third act will be the solution. So that would be my 3 acts. But then the last thing I do is I want to finish with the strongest note or story I'm gonna share. It could even just be a statement that I finish with that ties the whole thing together. But the big takeaway there is you start with your second strongest, so you pull the people in, and you finish with your strongest so that when you leave, they go, I need to see that speaker again, or I need to tell other people about them. The other thing I would say when you start with the second strongest, a great starting point, so this is part of still the first tip, I would say, is open with a question. People always say to me, how do I get the audience pulled in? And if you ask a question, even if they're looking at their phones, something internally on an unconscious level tells them they need to answer a question. So their mind starts working. So you pulled them in and got their attention. So I would say the easiest way, rather than comedy, which is risky if you're not used to comedy, or rather than starting with a story, which again is risky because you need to pull them into the story. And what happens if the story doesn't get exciting for 2 minutes? You've already lost their attention. So ask a question about what you're going to talk about. So for example, if I was telling that stand-up story, the question I might ask is, how many people in the audience here, by show of hands, would jump on a stand-up stage tonight if I could get you a gig? And I ask that question and you watch people shiver, but hands go up, people start thinking. So the first thing I would say is that's how I'd structure a talk. And that could be big enough on its own. So I'm going to give you 2 more really quick ones. The second thing is I would try to make sure that your talk has a hero and a villain in it. So just like a good story, a hero and a villain. So, and it doesn't have to be a person, or it could be. But let's say it wasn't a person. It could be COVID-19. Maybe, you do a talk 6 months from now